This all started last summer. I was 34 and just moved to the quiet suburb of Maplewood. I thought a fresh start would help me heal after my rough breakup. The neighborhood was nice, old homes, friendly people, and my rented house felt so cozy at first. It was just supposed to be a simple life. One evening, I walked home from the grocery store. The sky was turning dark and the air felt thick. I could hear my footsteps, and then, faintly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, but there was nobody there, just empty road and trees casting shadows. I shook it off. Maybe I was just jumpy. The next few days felt strange. I heard those footsteps again, echoing softly in my hallway when I was home alone. I felt a chill, but I told myself I was imagining things. I was in a new place, and it was normal to feel uneasy. I started to notice other odd things too. The shadows at dusk seemed to dance around me. Sometimes I'd catch something flickering in my peripheral vision, but when I turned, nothing was there. The neighbors acted different too. They whispered when I walked past and exchanged glances. One neighbor even warned me to lock my doors at night. Their worried faces made my stomach drop. What were they afraid of? One night I tried to push everything aside. I settled on my couch and flipped through channels. Then I heard the footsteps again. They were right outside my front door, louder this time. My heart raced. I crept toward the sound, my pulse pounding in my ears. I stood there, frozen, then finally opened the door. Nothing, just the cool night air rushing past. I closed the door with a thud that echoed in the silence. What was out there? Did I even want to know? I thought about calling a friend to share my fears, to talk about the strange happenings. When I finally dialed their number, I heard it again, the footsteps behind me, getting closer. I barely had time to breathe. I spun around, and there was a man, standing there, right in front of me. He whispered, "Why are you still here?" I blinked, then he vanished, just like that. I couldn't wrap my head around what I'd seen. I felt like the neighborhood was hiding something, and I had stumbled into something dark. As the days went by, the footsteps never stopped. They followed me everywhere. I would hear them in my home, on the street, as I tried to sleep. I wanted to escape it. I thought maybe I was losing my mind. I still don't understand what happened last summer. Those footsteps haunted me, and I still feel their echoes. I'm not sure if I should have stayed or if I should have left. Either way, I never found out why I was there or why they wanted me to go. All I know is I'm still running. The following morning, I woke up confused and tired. I hadn't slept well, haunted by fragments of dreams where shadows morphed into those footsteps. I decided I needed answers. I grabbed a quick breakfast and resolved to confront my neighbors. I chose Mrs. Jensen, the neighbor who seemed the least apprehensive when I first moved in. When I knocked on her door, she answered with a hesitant smile, but her eyes darted around, as if she feared being overheard. "Hey, I wanted to ask you something," I said, trying to sound casual. "I've been hearing some strange noises at night, footsteps, and, well, it's unsettling." Her expression shifted. Anxiety creased her brow, and she glanced over her shoulder. "You should be careful," she whispered. "Maplewood has its secrets." I pressed for more. "What do you mean? What secrets?" Before she could answer, her face paled, and she waved her hand dismissively. "I can't say. Just be aware." Confused and frustrated, I left her porch, but something nagged at me. I felt the heaviness of her unspoken words. As I walked back home, the shadows seemed darker, looming more threateningly. Later that afternoon, I decided to visit the local library. If anyone knew the history of Maplewood, it would be the librarians. The small building was quaint, red brick with creaky floors. I approached the reference section, eager to uncover whatever my new home was hiding. I searched through old books and newspapers, flipping through pages about past residents and town lore. Then I stumbled across an article featuring a picture of a man who resembled the figure I had seen. He looked eerily familiar, his eyes dark and hollow, just like the ones I remembered from my encounter. Curiosity mixed with dread. The article described him as a local who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances years ago. As I read, a chill ran down my spine. The last reported sighting was right in my neighborhood. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, but the aisle was empty. My heart raced. I wanted to run, to escape the suffocating air and the hidden secrets of Maplewood. That's when I saw it, a newspaper clipping pressed into the pages of the book I was holding. It had been wedged there, as if someone wanted me to find it. It was a handwritten note scrawled across the bottom. "They won't let you leave." I glanced around as panic surged. I had to get out of there. As I raced toward the exit, the footsteps echoed louder, following me, making my stomach flip. I pushed through the door, gasping for breath, but I knew one thing: this was far from over. Now I had questions, and I was determined to uncover the truth. But would I be putting myself in even greater danger by seeking answers? I barely slept that night. Every creak in the house felt magnified. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer and deeper. My mind raced with the mysteries I had uncovered. What had happened to the man in the article? Why did Mrs. Jensen act so fearful? And who had left that note for me? Determined to find more answers, I returned to the library the next day. I needed to dig deeper into Maplewood's history, to sift through every clue it held. The air felt thick, heavier than before, as I pushed open the creaking door. After scanning the room, I made my way back to the reference section. I was meticulous this time, flipping through every dusty volume. It was tedious work, but I was on a mission. Just as I was about to give up hope, I found another article. It was dated a year after the disappearance I had read about. The headline read, "Mysterious Footsteps Haunt Residents." It described how people were reporting hearing footsteps late at night, right around the time the man had vanished. My stomach knotted. It appeared the phenomenon was ongoing. I kept reading, my hands shaking as I absorbed the words. There was a mention of a woman named Clara, a resident who claimed she had seen the man wandering the streets even after his disappearance was confirmed. The article suggested she was troubled, possibly imagining things, but in my gut, I felt her story deserved consideration. As I continued, I suddenly heard it again, the footsteps. This time, they were unmistakably coming from behind the bookshelves. I froze. My heart pounded in my ears. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, as if they were testing the ground. I didn't dare turn around. The last thing I wanted was to confront whatever was making that sound. I tried to focus, to shake it off, but I felt a chill creeping up my spine. Then, a thud. Something fell to the floor behind me. Slowly, I turned to see a small, leather-bound book lying open on the ground. My breath hitched. It looked ancient, filled with handwritten notes. I bent down cautiously to pick it up, glancing around one more time to make sure I was alone. As I opened it, the first page read, "The secrets of Maplewood are buried in its past, but you must be careful what you seek." My heart raced again. The warning echoed in my mind, amplifying my unease. Then everything shifted. The lights flickered again, and it felt like the air went out of the room. Shadows stretched and warped in odd shapes. Instinctively, I stepped back, gripping the book tightly. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line. That's when I heard it, a whisper, almost imperceptible. "Help me." The voice was close. My skin prickled with dread. I needed to know whose voice it was, but panic consumed me. I didn't just feel watched, I felt hunted. I rushed toward the exit, the book clutched against my chest. As I burst through the doors, the weight of what I had learned pressed down on me. Couldn't escape the feeling that I was being drawn deeper into a web of mystery that I might not survive. And then, standing just outside the library, I spotted a shadow moving in the distance. My heart skipped as I realized it was the same familiar figure I had seen before, the man from my dreams. He was watching me. I stood frozen, the shadowy figure stark against the fading light of the day. My instinct screamed at me to run, yet something kept my feet planted. Curiosity wrestled with fear. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice barely a whisper, hoping to sound braver than I felt. The figure took a step closer, and I was surprised to see that it wore a long coat, its collar pulled up against the chill. The features of his face were hidden, but there was something about the way he moved that felt familiar. It was as if he knew me, or worse, I knew him. "Help," he mouthed silently, his lips barely moving. I squinted, trying to catch a glimpse of his eyes, but they seemed to sink into shadow. My heart raced. Was this the voice I had heard back in the library? I took a shaky step forward. Are you the man from the article?" Suddenly, everything felt far too real. My hands shook as I held the ancient book, the leather warm against my skin. I wished for clarity, but more questions flooded my mind. As I focused on the figure in front of me, I saw a flicker of something, fear or urgency. It was hard to tell. Then, just like that, he turned and started moving away, heading toward the edge of the library steps. My gut twisted. Was I supposed to follow him? Before I could decide, I heard it again, the footsteps. This time, they were not just echoes of my own anxious heart. They were coming from the path behind me, quickening as if something else was getting closer. I spun around, scanning the dimming surroundings, but there was nothing. It was just me, the library, and an atmosphere thick with secrets. "Stop!" I shouted, a strange mix of desperation and determination in my voice. The figure ahead paused and glanced back, a flicker of sadness crossing his face before he disappeared around the corner. I hesitated, torn. Part of me wanted to flee, to return home and forget everything. But another part, a much stronger one, yearned for answers. The footsteps behind me sounded again, sharper now. A cold wave washed over me. I couldn't stay here. I darted after the shadow, my heart pounding. Maybe he could help me understand what was happening. As I rounded the corner, the figure was gone. The path ahead was empty and still, and the footsteps had fallen silent. I felt an unsettling void in the air. I reached the spot where he had been standing just moments before, peering around. Nothing but silence met me. But then something caught my eye. A scrap of paper lying on the ground where he had stood. I bent to pick it up, my heart racing again. The words were hastily scrawled, almost frantic. "Find Clara, she knows the truth." I felt a chill race down my spine. Who was Clara? Why was she important? I could feel the weight of the note pressing into my palm, the urgency of the message amplifying my need to act. The threat behind me lurked just out of sight, but the promise of a new lead pulled me forward. "I have to find her," I murmured to myself, feeling the fear morph into determination. Then, above me, the lights flickered once more, casting shadows that danced grotesquely around me. The air thickened like a storm was brewing. I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went, but I was ready now to face whatever it held. And just as I turned to leave, the air turned icy. I sensed it, a presence. Someone was watching me. I spun on my heel, the scrap of paper clenched tightly in my fist. My breath came in short gasps, and all the certainty I had felt moments before was fading rapidly. The feeling of being watched was now a palpable weight on my chest. I scanned the dimly lit corners of the library's outer walls, desperate to find someone, or something, that might give me a clue. "Hello?" I called out, trying to sound brave even as my voice wavered. No answer came, just the rustle of the wind whispering through the leaves above me. I could have sworn I heard a faint giggle, but I dismissed it as my imagination. It was a trick of the mind, the stress twisting everything around me. The note burned in my hand, urging me to take action. Clara, the name echoed in my head, stirring an odd sense of recognition. My mind raced through the possibilities. Was she a friend, a relative, or someone completely new? I needed to find her. I glanced back at the library one last time before stepping onto the path that led away from it. The darkness pressed in around me like an old friend, offering a mix of comfort and dread. I moved quickly but carefully, listening for the unnerving footsteps that had haunted me moments before. As I walked, I replayed the encounter in my head. The way the figure had moved, how they had paused, their silent plea for help. It felt like something out of a fever dream, but deep down, I knew this was real. The urgency of the situation propelling me onward. Where would I find Clara? I muttered under my breath, my mind whirling. I started thinking of places, the old diner, the park, but nothing seemed right. Just then, a flash of movement caught my eye to the left, a figure darting between the trees. My heart thudded in my chest. Was it him again, or someone else? "Wait!" shouted, but there was no response. I hurried toward the movement, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Each step felt shaky, like a tightrope walk over a gaping chasm. To my left, a small structure went unnoticed until that moment, a run-down shed, its door ajar. My instinct screamed for caution, but the thought of missing a chance was unbearable. I pushed the door open with force. It creaked loudly, the sound echoing through the night. Inside, it was dark and cluttered, filled with the shadows of forgotten things. I stepped over old crates, trying to quiet my breathing. A chill rushed over me as I sifted through the debris, hoping to find anything that connected to Clara. Then, glancing towards a corner of the shed, I noticed something unusual. A light flickering. It wasn't the dim glow of a bulb, but rather an unnatural blue radiance. My heart raced as I approached it, wary but drawn in. That's when I saw it. A small, ornate box, intricately carved, glowing softly. Something told me it was important. As I reached out to touch it, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. I whipped around, panic surging through me. Someone was there, standing in the doorway, blocking my exit. I couldn't see their face, but the figure's silhouette was unmistakable. It was him. I froze for a second, every ounce of bravado evaporating. The figure in the doorway shifted, their outline dark against the faint light of the shed. My mind raced as I searched for an escape route. "Who?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. My heart hammered in my chest, echoing the desperate rhythm of my thoughts. The figure stepped forward, and the dim light illuminated their face just enough for me to see a twisted smile. It sent a chill down my spine. "You shouldn't be here," they said, their voice low and cold. "This doesn't concern you." "Clara," I blurted out, my connection to her seeming like the only thing I could grasp in this moment. "Where is she?" The smile faded, and the figure's eyes narrowed. "You're asking questions you don't want answers to." They took another step closer, and I instinctively stepped back, bumping into the edge of a stack of crates. "I need to find her," I said, my voice rising with urgency. My pulse thrummed louder, drowning out the clicking of the door's latch, a sound I couldn't remember hearing before. I could tell they were unfazed by my panic, their frame blocking out the little light that remained. "Then you'd best understand the price of knowledge," the figure responded, voice dripping with menace. "Some truths are best left buried."
Feeling cornered, I glanced back at the glowing box. Whatever was inside, it felt like it held the key to everything. "If you know something, tell me," I shouted, desperation cracking through my tone. That seemed to provoke a ripple of amusement from them, the smile returning, but without
warmth. "You really think you're ready for that?" They gestured toward the box dismissively. "It's not a toy." With a burst of determination, I lunged toward the box. If there were answers, they were within reach, and I couldn't let fear stop me any longer. My fingers brushed the smooth surface. It pulsed with energy, a strange connection sparking through me, a whispering promise of truth. But before I could fully grasp it, the figure surged forward, blocking my way. "You don't get to decide what you can handle." They reached for me, hand extended with equal parts force and restraint. I barely dodged, stumbling backward as my mind spun. The door rattled behind the figure, but their presence felt like an impenetrable wall. "Let me out! Let me find Clara!" I shouted, panic rising to a new pitch. In that instant, something inside me snapped. It was no longer just about Clara. It was about breaking free from this nightmare. I had to find a way out. Then, without warning, the lights flickered violently, plunging us into darkness. The air charged with tension, and I felt the table of crates shudder beneath me. My eyes adjusted to the blackness, every sound magnifying in intensity. "Now you've done it," the figure hissed, their voice edged with something darker. "What do you mean?" I faltered, fear flooding my senses. I needed to understand, but my urgent questions fell on deaf ears. The stillness was suddenly shattered by a low growl, deep and menacing, rising from somewhere within the shadows. And then everything went dark. I stumbled backward, disoriented in the pitch black, my heart racing against the unnatural quiet. The growl resonated again, closer this time, sending a jolt of ice down my spine. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel the oppressive weight of the darkness, almost like a living thing. "Get away from me!" I shouted into the void, hoping my voice would disguise my panic. The figure was still there. I could sense it, lurking just outside the flickering shadows, and I feared what might step out of that darkness next. "You shouldn't have come here," they whispered, their voice now a cruel melody. As if on cue, a sudden crash echoed off the wooden walls, making me jump. I focused on the sound, bracing myself for whatever might appear. My instinct screamed at me to run, to escape while I still had the chance. But another growl resonated through the shed, low and rumbling. I was paralyzed, the fear rooting me to the spot. Then the lights flickered back to life. The figure stood before me, still cloaked in half-shadow, but I could make out a glint in their eyes, something dark and exciting. Behind them, I could see the outline of the glowing box radiating a soft blue light, almost beckoning me to come closer. In that moment, though tempting, it felt more like a warning. I shifted my gaze. To my horror, in the corner of the shed, something was moving beneath the shelves, a silhouette shifting with an eerie fluidity. My stomach dropped. "What did you awaken?" I managed to croak out, my voice laced with dread. The figure chuckled, a hollow sound that made my skin crawl. "You'll find out soon enough," they said. "This place has its own guardians, and you just might become one of them." I had to think fast. The boxes, the figure, the unknown monster lurking, it all felt like a trap. I remembered the door, behind the figure. I took a step sideways, drawing their attention with a sudden movement. "I'm not scared of you," I yelled, hoping to rally my courage. "Is that so?" the figure replied, amusement coloring their tone. They stepped slightly aside, revealing more of the box, but also affording me a quick glimpse at what lurked behind them. It was low to the ground, shifting and writhing like smoke, but it had form. Sharp claws glimmered in the light. That's when I saw it, a tangle of dark shapes, shadows moving as if alive. My instinct told me to run, but I had no idea if the door was still an option. I edged toward the side, eyes fixed on the figure, who seemed amused by my fear. "Do you really think you can escape?" the figure sneered, stepping fully into the light. The deepened shadows coalesced into an unrecognizable form that lunged toward me. I dove sideways, adrenaline spiking, praying to reach the door before whatever was behind me closed in. Just as my fingers brushed against the cool metal of the latch, a resounding howl pierced the air, filling the shed with an ear-splitting terror. Panic surged through me. I had no idea what was about to happen, but I knew one thing. I had to leave, somehow. The darkness loomed behind, and I didn't want to find out what horrors awaited me if I hesitated. I yanked the door open, breathless and desperate. The hinges creaked, protesting against the force of my escape, but I didn't let that stop me. I leaned into the open space and stumbled onto the wooden porch, glancing back to see if I had made it out. The figure still loomed in the doorway, backlit by the soft glow of the box behind them. Their smile stretched wide, almost mocking. I recoiled, my instinct screaming at me to run. Just as I turned to bolt down the steps, a low rumble echoed from the shed, and the floorboards shook beneath my feet. I hit the ground and sprinted into the night, the cool air hitting my face like ice. I felt the weight of the darkness pressing down, but I dared not look back. The howling faded into the distance, replaced by the rapid pounding of my heart. I didn't stop running until I reached the edge of the tree line, where the moonlight struggled to break through the branches. I paused, gasping for air, trying to orient myself. The woods were alive with unfamiliar sounds, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, but none of that mattered. I had to figure out what just happened. Panic began to recede, and shame crept in. I was terrified of the unknown, suffocated by my own fear. I thought of the figure's words, "This place has its own Bardians." The thought sent a wave of dread washing over me. What were they? Who were they? And what had I awakened in that shed? I turned back, the dark expanse behind me looking less like an escape route and more like a doorway to an ancient secret. The shadows felt hungry, waiting for me to return. But there was nothing to do but keep moving. I glanced at my phone. No signal. I swore under my breath. Great, just great. With no way to call for help, I turned back toward home, hoping clarity would come with the familiar surroundings. As I walked, I tried to piece together my escape. The figure, their cryptic words, the motion I'd sensed in the shed. It felt like a puzzle I wasn't qualified to solve. That glowing box haunted me. It felt like it had a purpose, something beyond my understanding. Suddenly, I heard it again, a low growl echoing through the woods. My heart dropped. I wasn't alone. I spun around, scanning the trees. For a moment, all I could see were shadows. But then I caught sight of something moving, a figure gliding between the trunks, just out of reach of the moonlight. I took a step back. The air was thick, and that same dark shape I'd seen in the shed seemed to be stalking me now. I turned to run, but my foot caught on a root, sending me sprawling to the ground. Panic surged again as I scrambled to my feet, urgency driving me. I could sense the figure closing in, feel the warmth of breath on my neck. Something was watching me, something ancient. In that moment, I realized I couldn't just run. I had to face it. I had to know what that box meant. And somehow, I had to uncover the truth of the guardians I'd awakened. I stood there, wrestling with my fear. The woods around me were eerily quiet now, but I could still feel the weight of the unknown pressing in. The figure from the shed was out there, and the growl echoed again, loud and ominous. I had to figure out what to do, but there was no time to think. I took a breath and moved deeper into the trees. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground was trying to pull me back. I forced myself to keep going. The branches scraped against my skin, and the scent of damp earth filled my lungs. Ahead, I saw a glimmer of light. Curiosity pulled me forward, but fear crawled up my spine. I was miles from home, and whatever haunted me could be waiting just outside. But I couldn't ignore that shimmer. It was a beacon in the darkness. As I approached the source, I realized it was a clearing. The moonlight poured into the space, illuminating a small stone altar at its center. My heart raced as I examined it. Was this the box's resting place? Did the figure want me to find it? The altar was covered in strange symbols, ones I'd never seen before. They twisted and turned in a way that seemed to pulse with life. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cool surface, and a jolt of energy surged through me. The air crackled, electrifying every nerve. Then I heard it, a laugh, echoing from the shadows. It taunted me, sending chills down my spine. I spun around, searching for the source, but all I found were the trees, their branches stretching like claws into the night. The laughter faded, but quickly morphed into the growl I'd heard moments earlier. Panic surged again, stronger now. I knew I had to act. I couldn't be overwhelmed by fear. Turning back, I scanned the edges of the clearing, desperate to find a way to protect myself or even understand what I was dealing with. And that's when I saw it. A stone disc lay partially hidden under leaves nearby. It was marked with more of those strange symbols. I knelt down, brushing away the debris. Something caught my eye. A faint glow emanated from the disc, almost inviting. The growling grew louder, circling me. I felt the presence behind me, inches away. I couldn't hesitate. I slammed my palm against the surface of the disc, and the light erupted, illuminating the woods like a beacon. Everything froze. The growl ceased. In that moment of silence, I glimpsed shadows shifting, shapes contorting, hiding just beyond the reach of the light. Maybe this was my chance. But then, something unexpected happened. The disc vibrated beneath my hand, and a voice broke through the stillness, low and reverberating. "You've called to the guardians. They will come to collect what is theirs." I pulled my hand back in shock. My heart pounded in my ears as I processed the weight of those words. Collect what was theirs. The figure was already shifting closer, darker now, taking form in the moonlight. I was not just facing the guardians. I had become part of their story, and I had no idea what that truly meant. The shadow swirled, and before I could turn to run, a gust of wind blew through the clearing, carrying whispers of secrets long forgotten. I didn't know how long I stood there, frozen in terror and awe, but it felt like an eternity. The shadows shifted closer as the presence of the figure deepened. My breath quickened, and I had to get out, get away from whatever I had awakened. But my feet wouldn't move. "Help me!" The figure's response rang in my ears. Mind, a soft plea mingling with the overwhelming fear as the growls intensified. The shadows gathered like a pack, their forms undulating with menace as tendrils of darkness reached for me. I remembered the note I had found in the library. They won't let you leave. With a sudden surge of clarity, I knew I had to confront whatever this was, to stand up against the ghost haunting my new life. Gritting my teeth, I turned to the stone disc. The glow still pulsed beneath my fingers like a heartbeat. Whatever power it held, perhaps it was my last chance. "Show me!" I shouted, desperation blending with determination. If the guardians were real, I needed to speak to them, to understand what was at stake. At that moment, the air crackled, and a wind, a force of nature, wrenched itself from the disc. It felt not just like a breeze, but like a living current, sweeping away the shadows that had felt so menacing just moments before. The growl transformed into something guttural, a roar of anger and confusion as the darkness recoiled, partially revealing twisted shapes that writhed, almost human-like. I held my ground, not allowing fear to dictate my next move. "Who are you?" I demanded, addressing whatever beings lurked within the shadows. "What do you want from me?" A flicker, a blinding flash, and suddenly I was back at the altar. The boundaries of reality felt thin, almost fragile. The shadowy figure stepped forward, its form wavering, becoming less of a figure and more of a swirling mist, each bit flowing into the ether. "You've come too far," it murmured, the voice layered, echoing through the clearing. "You sought the truth, but truths come at a price." "What price?" I pressed, my voice steadying despite the turmoil within. "I have no intention of becoming part of whatever this is." "Part of this?" it laughed, a sound that reverberated like shattered glass. "You already are, whether you accept it or not." "Where is she?" I challenged. "Tell me what you want." Then, with an intensity that took my breath, the mist began to spiral and converge. Haloed by the moonlight, it swirled, reclaiming the shadows that coalesced from the edges. "The Guardian's truth lies in the past, but it is you who will decide its fate. Find Clara, unlock the memories, and the footsteps that haunt this town will cease, for you, for all." Before I could respond or ask more questions, the light emanating from the stone grew blinding, almost painfully bright. I shielded my eyes, crouching low against the ground. The air felt thick, charged with an electricity that rattled my bones. And then, just as the light reached an unbearable crescendo, it winked out, plunging me into darkness once more. Cautiously, I opened my eyes. I lay on the ground at the edge of the clearing, the comforting weight of earth beneath me, and nothing but silence around me. Slowly I stood, heart still racing. Had it all been a dream? Was the encounter real, or just figments woven from stress and fear? The moon bathed everything in soft light, illuminating nothing but trees, shadows stretching behind me. My gaze fell back to the stone altar, now void of energy, damp leaves littering its worn surface. But the echoes remained, the whispers hidden within my mind. The path to uncovering the truth lay ahead. I couldn't ignore the message. Clara was the key, and somehow I would find her. As I turned back towards the direction of home, a chill ran down my spine at the thought of what awaited me in this town, the burden of secrets that wrapped tightly around its residents. I could still hear the faintest echo of footsteps behind me, an unanswered question that lingered in the air. I knew Maplewood had its grips on me now, and the shadows danced ever closer. I quickly walked away from the clearing, the night carrying on around me, but in my heart I felt the urgency to uncover the truth, even if it meant confronting the unknown again. It was a dangerous dance, but I was in it now, utterly entwined. And something told me I wasn't the only one searching. Maybe I hadn't left the danger behind after all. I moved forward, every step weighed with what I couldn't yet understand,
and I couldn't shake the feeling that the answers I sought were waiting for me, just beyond the shadows. It was a dangerous dance, but I was in it now, utterly entwined, and something told me I wasn't the only one searching. Maybe I hadn't left the danger behind after all. I moved forward, every step weighed with what I couldn't yet understand, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the answers I sought were waiting for me, just beyond the shadows.